A couple of months ago, we did a big underwater monster movies of 1989 marathon. I skipped over the Rift because it didn't come out in 1989, but 1990, so they missed it by a year. But now, it's time, don't you think? So let's dive right into the Rift and see what we missed. It opens up with the MIB showing up at some guy's house and getting him out of bed. Talk about a rude awakening.
Come on, Kathy, leave me alone.
Well, it turns out that this is Wick Hayes, and he designs fancy submarines for a corporation called Contech. His first design, the Siren 1, has gone missing, and these bigwigs are looking to blame Wick's design over their modifications. However, knowing that he's the only one who knows the ship inside and out, he's forced to board the Siren 2 and go looking for the original ship.
Hi, Wick Hayes.
On board, we meet some of the crew. The important ones are Robbins, the navigator, Skeets, the, what's he do again? Oh yeah, just crack jokes and serve no other purpose.
Skeets, if you ever grow up, let me be the first to know.
Except for maybe to boost morale. Captain Phillips.
Sure. Look at me, sure. I'm the captain now.
No, not that Captain Phillips. This Captain Phillips is played by R. Lee Ermey. If you don't recognize his face, you'll know him by his voice as the rough, tough military guy that's in every movie. But most notably Full Metal Jacket.
What have we got here? A comedian, private joker. I admire your honesty. Hell, I like you. You can come over to my house and my sister.
And finally, we have Lieutenant Nina Crowley, aka Wick's ex-wife. I wonder what's gonna happen here. I can already see the end of this movie. They're gonna reconnect and spark a love interest again, right?
Now why don't you just get the hell out of here and stay as far away from me as possible while we're on this mission?
So with that all out of the way, we can see that really no one likes Wick. Mainly because they've all been told it was his fault the first ship crashed, due to his faulty design. But we know that that's not the case. He knows what he's doing, and soon enough, he'll have to prove it to the others. Meanwhile, they dive down deeper and deeper into the ocean, testing out the ship as they go. It seems like the equipment is off by 3 degrees, which doesn't sound like much, but it's enough to cause a collision. When asked what happened, Wick figures out that they moved his sonar system to make room for a missile tracking system. So, again, it's not his fault. He's the hero of the movie, he can't do anything wrong. Even so, Phillips gives him an earful and kicks him out of the control room.
You just might as well have me tapping damn Morse code on a bulkhead.
Hayes, you can play with your pecker for all I care, just as long as you don't do it in my control room.
As they go down, Robbins picks up on Siren 1's black box. So, that's their new target. If they manage to retrieve it, maybe then they'll finally get some answers. Eventually, they find some seaweed, but they're so deep that photosynthesis is impossible, so Nina wants to get a sample to study. They send a diver out who gets the sample and while out there decides to take some pictures of what's left of Siren 1 and her crew. While he's doing that, he's attacked by what looks like an octopus, and it carries him down to his death. They're all pretty upset by this, and they blame his death on a tear in his suit. Well, I guess the octopus isn't done, because a little later, it comes back for a full course, trying to take the entire sub down. Luckily, Wick thinks fast. If they're able to reverse the polarity of the ship's radar cloaking device, then that should shock the monster, and it would hopefully let him go. So that's what they do, and as luck would have it, it seems to work. But now their main turbo is clogged, and they're falling down to the ocean floor. Wick once again comes up with a plan to save all their lives. If they can overdrive the rotary blade, they could land on a ledge and have time to make repairs. I'm starting to notice that's pretty much all this movie is. The main character's coming up with some technical jargon that doesn't really make sense, but it's a movie, so you just roll with it. Anyway, after making a bunch of silly faces, his plan works and everyone's safe again. After a job well done, Phillips gives him access to the control room and a little pat on the back. Now they have some time to catch their breath and make repairs. However, the mission hasn't changed. They need to find that black box.
Black box signal located.
Nina works in the lab and figures out how plant life is growing down here. Basically, the plants are able to send out a poison that kills the fish, and the plants get their oxygen from that. Even though that makes no sense, that's not how photosynthesis works, but that probably doesn't matter when your plant looks like green bubble wrap. With the repairs finally done, the ship isn't perfect, but good enough to continue on with their mission. They navigate their way through a cave and past the turbulent waters, until finally they surface. They seem to have found a receded, naturally pressurized subterranean cavern. Or in other words, an underwater cave. And it looks like this is where the black box signal's coming from. But something's wrong. It's not a black box, but Morse code for SOS. What are they getting into?
It's from somewhere inside that cave tunnel.
Well, they decide to suit up and take a look outside, finding evidence that the original crew had been there. They split up into teams, and it's not long before we see that they're not alone. Hiding in the walls are these big insect-looking things. This guy, Flemings, is attacked and gets paralyzed. They try to get him out of there, but look up to see a bunch of the monsters all around them. They do manage to escape with Fleming, but at this point he's far too gone and begging for them to shoot him. So Anna does, taking him out of his misery. They continue on, fighting the bugs as they go. Sometimes they win, sometimes they lose, but eventually they find a light deeper in the cave. And it's a full-blown lab. Here's where the SOS signal's coming from. And, well, let's just say it's not doing this guy any good.
Oh, man.
Back on board the ship, they notice that their oxygen regenerator has lost power, and ask the mechanic, Muller, to take a look. He discovers that Nina's plant monster has taken over, and, worse yet, like a dummy, he touches it, causing the plant to spew poison all over him. So he's as good as gone. The ship's cook sees this and calls for help.
Please hurry, Captain! Hurry!
Let's go, Lieutenant.
When they get there, they can see what a mess they're all in. Part of the crew that was out in the cave make it back to the ship, but they lost Anna out there and they're gonna have to go back. Before they do that, however, they do take a look at some tapes they were able to find in the lab. They're mostly destroyed, but what they can make out is something about a DNA accelerator, a machine that would greatly decrease the time needed for genetic evolution. So keep that in mind. They all suit up to go back out and get Anna, only Robin staying behind on the ship. Believe it or not, they actually are able to get a hold of her via the radio. She's somehow still alive, but running from the creatures. They follow her until eventually make it into a giant cavern, and smack dab in the middle of it is the DNA accelerator. We see a little taste of what it's able to produce, and from the looks of it, it's almost made something that resembles humans. They go into the accelerator and find that Anna has already become part of it. She tells them the only way to end all this is to blow it up. But the giant monster hanging inside the cave isn't going to give up that easy. They fight this thing for a bit, and it kind of reminds me of the final boss in Contra. Just how it's stuck up on the wall. It looks pretty cool. Thinking fast, our heroes spot some explosive tanks below her and blast the monster to Kingdom Come. But that, of course, causes a cave-in, and they only have a few minutes to get out of there. Meanwhile, back on the Siren 2, it looks like Robbins has his own agenda.
Mission accomplished.
He readies the escape pod and plans on leaving without the other members of the crew. But, lucky for them, the main hatch is still open. As he goes to close it, he sees the others are getting closer than he thought. They manage to get in before the main ship goes down, but inside Robbins is ready for him, and he confronts our heroes armed. He now explains that the Contact Corporation hired him to close off the rift the lab was in, sealing its secrets from the world. His plan is to blow up the Siren 2 ship, which will seal the cave. He can get out using the escape pod, and back on the surface, the company will blame Wick's design, saying it was faulty, and that's why the ship blew up. He forces him into the room with the poisonous plants and locks the door. His plan might have worked too if it wasn't for Wick's quick thinking. He gets into the ship's main computer and pulls out a single chip, telling Robbins that there's no other chip like it on the whole ship, and if it's broken, they can't get power again, forcing Robbins to open the door. But Phillips is tired of his crap and takes his anger out on Robbins, forcing him to touch the plant, killing him. But the microchip was destroyed in the fight. Really, it's no big deal. Wick was just bluffing. They don't actually need it at all. Phillips arms the bomb on the ship to blow up the rift because he doesn't want any chance of these monsters getting to the surface. Which, was Robin's plan, but now they're able to tell the world the truth about the corporation and prove that Wick's design wasn't faulty. As they load up in the escape pod, Phillips stays behind. It turns out that he too was infected in the fight, and he's a dead man. Wick and Nina escape, just like I predicted in the beginning, and Phillips puts his head between his legs and kisses his butt goodbye. And that was The Rift, 1990's underwater monster movie. And speaking of the monster, I wish there was a little more of it. Sure, you have the poison plants and the little bug-looking things, but I wanted to see more of that giant thing on the wall. Instead, they chose to focus more on the human bad guys and making an evil corporation. Which, at this point, it'd been done to death. They knew what they were making here. A B-movie. So go all in. Show us guys in rubber suits fighting the main character. Other than that, the Rift is okay. Ermey is really the only standout talent. The music sets the mood, and the storyline is what it is. The Rift is the type of movie you might see the trailer for, but wait a few weeks until it's at the discount theater. Or, better yet, rent it for a few bucks at the local Blockbuster. I give The Rift 2.5 mutant wall monsters out of 4.
I don't understand what's going on with these ATQ circuits. Why don't you check it out?
I'll get right on it. Just hold it right there.
Well, let's get to it, huh?